At a rapid pace, traffic lights, matrix signs, vehicles, and many other objects become smarter with the aid of new technologies. But in order to make mobility really intelligent, more is needed. All the elements within the traffic system must communicate with each other, bi-directional, and in real time. By now, Traffic Live Exchange has proven itself in the Netherlands as a national platform, and in addition to that, in various proofs of concepts in other European regions. TLEX is a smart, dynamic and independent system, linking information from traffic equipment and road users with one another, and opening it to service providers. The performance of TLEX is unmatched by low latency and offers easy deployment, hardware and vendor independency, platform and data monitoring, governance functionality, and maximum security and privacy. The opportunities of a connected world are obvious. Ready to use, always available, security and privacy guaranteed. TLEX, powered by Monoch.
Hello there and welcome to this webinar from Monoch, bringing real-time safety services to connected vehicles, where we introduce you to a thriving connected vehicle deployment model that already gets more than 2.5 million road users benefiting from real-time safety and traffic information services. Over the next hour, we'll hear about a vendor-neutral system that allows everyone in the mobility sector to connect. We'll find out how government has embraced the concept of talking traffic and the way local authorities have implemented the concept and realised safety, environmental and economic benefits. We'll then talk through the implications and give you the chance to ask questions of our panellists. You can place your questions in the Q&A box by clicking on the tab at the top of your screen. So, who are our expert panellists for the next hour? Let's meet Menno Malta, the CEO and founder of Monoch. We'll meet Casper de Jonge. He's Programme Manager Mobility and Transitions at the Dutch Ministry for Infrastructure and Waterworks. And there's Bart Lowyck, who is Partner Manager of Mobilidata for IMEC in Belgium, and we'll come to Casper and Bart in a moment, but let's first kick off by hearing from Menno about the benefits of CITS.
Thank you, Paul. I would like to talk a bit about deploying CITS with impact. So when we founded Monoch, which was in 2016, we actually started Monoch because we were feeling that CITS was not really delivering to its expectations. And so we started with an analysis of the reason for this. And actually one of the first things that we notice is that when it comes to CITS, the first topic of conversation is very often technology. So we have conversations about architecture, about communication technology, interfacing, security, and we really think that this is not the best way to start the work on CITS. And another thing that we see is a silo approach, especially within the world of the authorities, which is also perfectly understandable. What we see is that departments face a particular challenge and they start to fix or solve that challenge, and then they move on to the next one. But by doing so, we see sort of a world of silos that has been created. And an example of that is roadworks. So often we see this as one use case that is a solution is built for this particular use case. Data is shared from one or a few authorities, but it's quite uncertain what the quality of the data is. And as a result of the limited scope, and the limited, well, let's say knowledge about quality, there's not a lot of interest about this. Another thing that we see that CITS seems to be stuck in pilots. So we see pilots over and over again concerning the same use cases. And this is really a pity because we think that actually if we want to bring CITS into a large scale world, we need to move on to scale it up, because there will be new challenges in the scale-up phase, as with every scale-up of technology and solutions. So something also quite special about CITS is that we seem to be willing as an industry to invest a lot of time and energy in technologies that have no audience today. So many pilots and projects are using communication technologies that are not available in car today or at the roadside. And we think this is also not the ideal way to work on CITS and have impact. So combined, we think that these are the reasons why we see a lack of impact for CITS today. And what we did when we founded Monoch, we took a step back and we looked at it from a bit, let's say, more holistic perspective, where we said, okay, the first thing that is really important to notice is that CITS or mobility is an ecosystem. And in this ecosystem, there are different stakeholders and they all have their interests. So it's not just about the road users or just about the authorities or the vendors of roadside equipment or the car manufacturers. All these stakeholders have their own interests. And another thing that is important to notice is that data is not created in one place and then going to one audience. Now, if we really want to translate this world into a connected, smart ecosystem, we need to realize that data is created by all the different stakeholders, and we need to share that data between all the stakeholders. So this is why we created the TLEX platform. And this is the Traffic Light Exchange platform. And this is really capable of serving the interests of all the different stakeholders and handling this real-time data exchange. So we solve a number of technical and organizational obstacles with this platform. We started the development of TLEX late 2016, and we have continued to add functionality since then. So we have a pretty good idea of the functionalities that you need to support such an ecosystem. And we think there are 5 key functionalities that are needed. And the obvious one is, of course, exchanging and aggregating data. And this is about billions and billions of messages in the future. So it's not necessarily an easy thing to do. Then a second key functionality of this platform is managing data quality. If we imagine a world where equipment from different vendors, from different authorities, is sharing data, but also consuming status data from road users, and the traffic management centers of this world are connected, it's obvious that we need to manage the data quality and also flag, for instance, data that is not on par with what we expect. And we also want to be able to act upon data quality problems. The third functionality, and I think that's an obvious one, is managing the security and privacy in this ecosystem, as well as number 4, which is providing insights to all the connected stakeholders about what's happening, the performance of use cases, the reliability of connections and data. And then the 5th one, also extremely important, is the governance. So who's allowed to have access to data, on what conditions, who's allowed to bring in data into this ecosystem. And these combined functionalities really support the entire ecosystem. They provide interoperability as we work with open standards, and it reduces operational costs compared to the silo approach. But it also offers authorities the possibility to lead this transition and really bring the mobility world into a connected ecosystem. So the good thing is we know how important these functionalities are because we also have it live already at a large scale. And the other speakers will present on their experiences in their countries. So for my presentation, I just took the information about the connections we have in the Netherlands. And I used December last year as an example month. And back then we had around 25% of all the traffic lights in the country connected, roughly around 10,000 traffic lights. 25% of the cars were sharing their status and planning and consuming data. And we had 60% of all Dutch ambulances connected sharing warning messages. And please mind, these numbers are growing month by month because we have a continuous growth of both objects, such as access barriers, smart cameras, radars and sensors, but also on the vehicle side, we see continuous growth of connections. And together, just in December, we exchanged almost 20 billion CITS messages in this one deployment. So we have the connections. So what about impact? And again, the other presenters will also speak about that. But I just took three, what I think are highlights from a study, an impact study that was done on the Talking Traffic program. Let's say the origin of this deployment. And the first one is that this research showed that 60 to 90% of the road users adapt their behavior based on in-vehicle information, in this case, speed limits. But to me, this is not just about speed limits, because it tells me that if we bring information in car, road users act on it. And whether that's speed limit information or warning about hazardous locations or approaching ambulances, so we know it works. And then there's another KPI, which is on one particular use case, priority. So this research has shown that there's a 10% reduction of travel time for road users that have absolute priority, such as emergency services. And if you look at conditional priority, so let's say priority for road users such as public transport or logistical services that don't always get green at intersections, but based on some conditions, sometimes they will. There we see also significant reduction in travel times. So we know that we make a difference when we implement these use cases on a large scale. So what we've seen in deployments, and this is basically a top 5 of tips to road authorities that also want to have impact with CITS. And the number one advice is to create an ecosystem instead of creating silos. The number 2 is really to use the technology that's already there. So leverage cellular networks, apps, onboard units, and proven platforms, and you will be able to have an impact fairly quickly. And number 3 is not to focus on one golden use case. There are really a big set of use cases that bring value to the ecosystem. And you don't have to focus on one. And number 4 is really to be ambitious instead of doing the next pilot. And then I think number 5 is really the biggest lesson learned that we've seen. Focus on impact and start from there in determining what you need to get going with CITS. So, because when, and that's also a lesson from the Netherlands and also from Belgium, when you have this set up and running this ecosystem and these technologies, then the fun only starts. You can continue to add new use cases relatively easy in the ecosystem. And this slide shows a number of challenges that we think that CITS can really support if can help. So once you have this, you can continue your journey in deploying new and more use cases. So to wrap up this presentation, where is Monarch today? We're active all throughout Europe and also still expanding in the European countries. I do want to mention that we always work through partners and with partners. So if you are a technology provider active in the ITS industry and you're interested, please go to our website and there's more information there. And also our technology is pretty easy to evaluate. You can just go to our website and register for a trial environment. I want to end this presentation with something that makes me very proud. And that is that we will also launch our operations in the US starting in April. So for those of you that are based in the US and want to learn more, we will be at the ITS America conference in Expo We've also mentioned our email address of my US colleague here on this slide. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you want to know more. And with that, I give it back to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Menno. So there you are. You heard it first. If you're in the US, you'll find out more at the ITS America annual meeting, which is in Dallas, I think the week beginning the 24th of April. So you'll be able to find out more about Monarch there. I've been writing down huge numbers of questions already for Menno on the basis of the fascinating stuff he's shared with us. And you'll get your chance to ask questions as well as I will after our next two presentations. So remember, you can put your questions in by clicking on the Q&A box at the top of your Teams screen. Now let's move on to our next guest and hear the national government view with Casper de Jonge and more about talking traffic. So for the next 10 minutes, Casper, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Paul, and also congratulations, Menno, for expanding your services in the US. Excellent. And I thank you also for giving that excellent presentation, because you've touched a lot of subjects that I want to get into. Why did we start with CIDS in the Netherlands in the form of a program or ecosystem like Talking Traffic? Well, basically, we just wanted to make our roads safer and our road users a lot smarter, offer them information on things that they cannot physically see themselves through their windscreen or on their bikes. So that's the basic premise with a very practical approach. Here you see some numbers as to the program. All in all, it is a public-private investment. And usually CIDS is always very much focused on cars, but of course, being aware that we are in the Netherlands, we have a lot of cyclists, trucks, emergency services, public transport in different varieties. And we wanted to get them also into this ecosystem and hooked on those services. We're still expanding this. We're still continuing with new services, and I'll get into that in the last part of my presentation. It is a very much use case driven approach. Just to make it concrete and practical, what do we want to offer to our road users? That's in-vehicle signage, road hazard warnings, of course. Somebody said, well, why don't we do something with traffic lights? Well, that proved to be a very interesting part of this program, to give priority, both absolute priority and conditional priority to different groups of road users. Of course, giving basic information on the status of the traffic lights. You can also imagine the instances where you are parked behind a truck and you cannot physically see that light for yourselves. You have it on your screen, on your dashboard. We can also use those traffic lights to direct the flow of traffic through the city, intensifying or decreasing certain arms of an intersection. And there's parking, because that is always a hassle in a city, but also generates its own traffic. And you can reduce that by informing people based on their own navigation and their directions. This is not a technical architecture, but it gives you an idea of how this ecosystem functions. On the right-hand side, you see the different service providers. In the middle, you see the cloud service provisioning, where they all do the analysis and integration of different sorts of data. On the lower-hand side, you see different user groups, but also in the left-hand corner, the public traffic management systems and data sources that we use. And on the left-hand corner, upper left-hand corner, you see the TLEX, which Menno has presented, and also the traffic lights themselves from different vendors. It is vendor independent. It is all standardized. We can exchange that data, and we have all given the partners in this ecosystem, in this data chain, their own data budget. We've come up with a very strict set of requirements, milliseconds, budgeted per link in that data chain. Menno also mentioned that we did our surveys as to the initial results after about 5 years into this program. And overall, it is a very positive acceptance by the users. It is appreciated. They feel more alert. They feel also more assisted when they're performing their own driving tasks. And as Menno already shown you, it is also a instrument to give road users a more safe driver behavior when they're on the roads, and especially late at night or in dense traffic, both on highways and on municipal roads. That is a bonus. And we've succeeded in bringing into this value chain also the emergency services. And those warnings are especially very much appreciated by the consumers, because there's always a lot of panic when they hear a light, they hear a siren and they see lights blinking, but they don't know the speeds, they don't know when they will actually encounter those vehicles. And also in an urban setting, you cannot look behind the corner of a building. And now they get an alert, in 20 seconds, there will be a fire truck coming in from your right-hand side. And that gives them ample time to respond to that. On a more technical and financial level, it does work. And I'm very much aware of all the discussions internationally and also nationally on technology, but absolutely cellular technology latency has never been an issue. And I think that if you have further questions on that, Menno will be sure to answer those at the end of this webinar. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. You need to cooperate with each other. You need to be very strict in requirements and in agreements. And quality is key also in the way that you come up with the functional specs. It has proven to be very cost effective in the Netherlands from an investment standpoint. We have been able to manage privacy, security, and liability in a very effective way. And it's not just at one point in the beginning of a process coming up with the requirements, the design. It is also that we are sure that it is being performed over the duration of this operation. We think it is a very worthwhile to do this in a public-private cooperation, because we do need each other, not just the technological knowledge and the commercial deployment capabilities, but of course also the way that we look at society from a government standpoint, and the values that we want to assure that are being upheld and are in place. And of course, international standards by default. If there is a standard, we'll use it, and we can expand on that, but it needs to be fit for purpose, and we don't want to devise all sort of new stuff with all the costs and all the hassles and the lack of expandability. And I think that with Monarch deploying already in other countries and also in the US from April, that proves our point on that part. Not only the skill, but also the time that we have spent deploying this, it has been proven very worth our while. If consumers need to come up with all sorts of new devices and extra costs, it will be a very slow operation. So the adoption rate has been surprising, how quick that went. It also plays into existing and proven business models. I will go into the way that we're going to expand on this to vehicles, but also in an urban environment. And we didn't need to go into a very big organizational change on the public side, which is also very much a bonus. And I already said something about how road users behave. So that's very beneficial when it comes to sustainability and safety on roads. What are we doing next? Well, we're expanding our services. We rechristened the TLAX name into UDAP, the Urban Data Access Platform, because we're going into a wider variety of data sources over the next couple of years. We are expanding our base when it comes to the traffic lights. I think that in the next 4 years, we're going to reach about 50% of all traffic lights in the Netherlands. We are getting into the safety priority services with a new set of stakeholders, especially automotive organizations. The new organization formed on the public side, the National Access Point for Mobility Data, that came into place last year. And we came up with a structure and a system to govern our quality and really be specific onto the certification of all products and services that are being connected to TLAX UDAP, because you do need to have a certificate, which is also your license to operate on the Dutch market. And we do that in cooperation with the Flemish authorities in Belgium. So we're already expanding that way of governing this ecosystem. We are still in the middle of expanding our services, emergency services in the logistic sector. Public transport will probably need another year and a half. The automotive organizations are especially interested in the alerts for the approaching vehicle of our emergency services. And now we're very much getting our hands on the urban environment, combining smart mobility with smart city. That is also very much geared towards our main goals in 2030, reducing CO2 levels with 55%, reducing nitrogen levels with 50%, and adding some 900,000 new houses in the already built environment. So that are our new challenges. We are doing that, of course, I should probably say, in an ecosystem approach that has two sides to it. The physical domain, where we really need to coordinate our policy making across all public authorities, locally, regionally, and nationally. And that is very much focused on the many-to-many data exchange, both public sources and private sources, based on trust in a collective marketplace to make it visible who can offer which data, but also products and services. And we also share at least a lot of our services and data, and some of our RP that is being produced through a public co-investment. So that will keep us busy over the next couple of years, and I think that it is an example of how we started that initial ecosystem in talk and traffic, how it can logically and easily expand into the next level when you come up with a many-to-many data exchange, where we learn a lot in the data in the talk and traffic program. And this is how we devise the exchange of data, where, of course, Monarch and TLAX UDAP is also part of a much wider ecosystem with a wider variety of data sources and services connected to each other. Also, of course, with a governance on the level of the entire ecosystem. Because we are very much aware that CIDS is usually over the last 20 years very much focused on vehicles, but vehicles and other road users are always operating in a built environment. And I think that increasingly it is very much necessary that we combine smart city and smart mobility into also on a technical level, but also on an organizational level. And for us, we see it as the main route, or maybe the only route, towards those goals in safety and sustainability, and also user appreciation, with a very cost-effective investment, and a very relatively short deployment time. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll stop sharing now and give it back to Paul.
Hey, Casper, thank you very much indeed. That was fascinating, and plenty of questions for you to fit in the last 15 minutes or so of today's webinar. But before we come to our Q&A discussion, let's have one final guest who is across the border in Flanders. Let's hear from Bart Lowyck at IMEC in Antwerp. Bart, over to you, sir.
Good afternoon to everybody. I'll try to start sharing here. Good afternoon from Flanders, Belgium. I'm going to tell something about the Mobilidata program. It's a program run in Flanders by the Flanders Road Authority. But let me perhaps start for the people not knowing Flanders that well by pointing out where Flanders is located. Flanders is in Belgium. That's that small country in between the Netherlands and France. And actually, if you're looking for Flanders, you'll need to look even further. You need to look at the top part of Belgium. And that's a region the most densely inhabited of Belgium, of course. But it's a relatively small region. And with Mobilidata, we want to cover every road in that area. To remind you, Belgium is a little like mini Europe. We're 3 regions, 3 languages, so we know about getting things done in a complex country. The more observant audience will have noticed that I said it was a program done by the Flemish Road Authority. Me, I'm actually not from that Flemish Road Authority. I'm working at IMEC. And if anybody knows IMEC, it's probably for this. This is the IMEC Research and Development Center in Leuven, well known for its microchip development and much less known for what I'm doing. In the microchip development, there's like 2,000 people working for IMEC. Me, I'm not in the semiconductor technology. I'm not even in the technology platforms based on these technologies, not in the architecture, but here in that small domain of mobility where we try to do research and development on wicked problems in the domain of mobility and logistics. In this role, we were asked by the Flemish government to support them in the program management, the R&D, and the project management of Mobilidata. In Mobilidata, much like the Dutch did, we liked their example, so we followed them for the main parts. We defined 31 use cases we would like to see deployed in Flanders. Not piloted, not tested, deployed in Flanders. Same as it was done in the talking traffic program in the Netherlands. Well, we don't have the time to go into detail in every one of these 31 use cases, but if you do want more information, don't hesitate to contact Manoj or myself to talk further. I would like to point out the areas I think are key in Mobilidata. The 3 domains I'd like to identify first at the bottom. On the right side, the ITLC, same principle as they used in talking traffic and in the Netherlands. Anything that you can do with an ITLC, intelligent traffic light controller, which I prefer to call a connected traffic light controller, they can really take into account anything that the road user is doing in the neighborhood of the traffic light. So the cooperativity between traffic lights and road users is a very important aspect for Mobilidata. Secondly, I think that use cases surrounding dynamic locations are very much of interest to anyone interested in using CITS for their solution. When there's one thing that the road operator can do is to require people that are doing special things on their roads to make their position announced and share that position through Mobilidata with any one of the road users that's approaching that situation. Legislation is key there, and a requirement to share position whether you're a emergency service or road worker, a service vehicle of any kind that's present on the roads, well, you can ask them to make their position known and share that with road users. And much like Casper already said, we too in Flanders like to emphasize that CITS is not only directed to the automotive the world, but it really should cover all mobility aspects of any type of road user. So if you're walking or using public transport, through CITS, you should have a better experience, a safer experience, and more fluid experience on using the streets of Flanders. Then I was asked by the Menno to say something about safety use cases in Flanders. Well, in fact, safety is part of most every use case that we have. And so to discuss 31 use cases would be a bit too long. So I picked just two to pop up here and to show you what we're trying to do, push the use case a little bit further towards more safety for road users. On the left side, it's the use case called slow vehicle, and it's actually two use cases in one, because on the one hand, you have the service vehicles, which for example, the road inspectors will be manning on the highways. We will not only say when they're standing still along the highway, like in the cartoon here, but also when they're slowing down and going slow along the highway and send out notifications to approaching traffic. Yeah, you might say that's not that special part. It's just another situation of a road inspector and sharing his position. Well, actually, we push that also towards the regular road user. So the guy here on lane 1, when he's going slower than 70 kilometers an hour on the Flemish highways, which is the lower speed limit. I know it's not common in every country in the world, but if you're going slower than 70 on the highway in Flanders, you can get fined. So it's a nice threshold for us to use when you're going below that for a long time, to have applications capable of saying to the driver himself, say, hey, you're going a little bit slow, you should take measure, or you should speed up, or you should leave the highway. And at the same time, also notify the upcoming traffic that there is a slow vehicle in their pathway. We did have a lot of discussion with the first implementing application developer, that's B-Mobile, with his Flitsmeister app. They said, yeah, but we don't like it that much because we're going to create a lot of false alerts. Well, thanks to the speed limit, and also thanks to that we have the use case of traffic jam alert, they should be able to filter out the right amount of overflow in alarms to create a useful information flow. It's something that's new. It will be tested and evaluated, but we do expect it to be valuable, and it will be launched in one of the next waves of use cases that will be put into service. On the right side, a more classical example of wrong-way driving. You say, oh, well, wrong-way driving, it exists for a long time. Well, what's different in Flanders? We will be using the Bosch service of wrong-way driving. Many of you might already have heard of it. They use position data of position data of vehicles approaching the exit ramps in the wrong way to create an alert for the wrong-way driver himself, and also for wrong-way drivers that are in the same community as they are. But now in Mobilidata, we'll be opening that up towards all road users or all Mobilidata connected people. So you don't have to be part of the connected community of Bosch anymore, but you also will be notified when you're not part of the community. And also the Flanders traffic management system will use that information to manage traffic flows as much as possible surrounding the wrong-way driver location. Menno also asked me to share some Mobilidata findings, some experiences. Well, we can share a lot, but I took just 4. To create good information, it's hard work. It's something everybody knows, but first you have to start with good data, then you have to understand the data. Then if you're merging data sources, you have to understand which data source is the best in getting the location right, which data source is best in the description of the data, which data sources are good in finding the right start and stop time of situations. It's for every use case part a little bit of work and to getting things fine-tuned. And I do believe that even in the first months, years of operation, there will be experience built up and lessons learned to even refine that further. Secondly, I must say something about privacy and GDPR and how our Flemish road authorities are dealing with it. They don't mix very well. That's like water and oil. They don't like the fact that they might be treating something of a diminished version of personal data. And it's fighting a little bit with the fact that we in CITS, cooperativeness, would like to get as much information as possible to create better information. So it's finding a balance every time between what the road agency is willing to accept as a level of acceptable position data information, because it's always about positions. Road users share their position. What can we do with it? How long can we use it? How can we store it? Or how fast must we delete it? So it's a balancing act, which for some private parties involved in social media are totally on a different scale. These are they want to be exemplary in what they do with privacy. In our limited experience up until now, we are reinforced in our belief that if you want to do an inclusive and territory covering capability with CITS, you will need a hybrid form and the long range form especially. If you want to go from the blind pedestrian up until the commuter that's sitting on a bus and making it work for everybody to be part of a CITS ecosystem on the road user side, even the people driving with a legacy old vehicle that's not capable of any intelligence, you will need the long-range version of CITS. Last but not least, in my little list here is the road operators' new digital role. Well, road operators are very apt and equipped to deal with pouring concrete, making bridges, building roadside infrastructure. But when their digital role is added to that, so to manage the roads and what's surrounding it in a digital way, it's a huge wage that's approaching them. And the CITS is a nice first step towards this digital road operatorship phase that's coming. I was also asked by Menno to say, hey, Bart, say something about benefits. And I took the road user perspective. It's what I like most. On the bottom here, you can see that the system has evolved. And on the left side, you can see my first driver's license. Yeah, I got it in December 1985. I needed to know 3 speeds. In the built-up area, you could drive 60 kilometers an hour. Outside of built-up areas, 90. And on the highways, 120. And those were fixed speeds. No discussion, except for some roadworks here and there. These were the speeds you could encounter when you took the road. On the right side, you can see the temporary driver's license for my son. He's learning how to drive. And I've added some of the speed limits. He has to know in what area he will be needing to drive 5 up until 100 kilometers an hour. These are not static. These are dynamical. They're changing all the time. So you have to, as a driver, have evolved from having to know 3 speeds to 8 speeds, and they've gone from static to dynamic, and it will only get worse. And this is just the example of the speed, what you can use. Not even talking about low emission zones, the dangers that are approaching, the dangerous area. The traffic has become so intense that any support that you can, cooperative support that you can give a road user is very much needed these days to be able to drive safely. Simply, it's to be part of traffic in a car, on your bicycle, on your motorcycle. You will need extra information to support you in handling traffic safely. And it's my strong opinion that even the autonomous vehicles that are coming will deal with the same problems. Okay, they have lots of sensors, cameras, and lidars and radars and whatever, but they will appreciate the extra flow of information, digital flow of information that's coming in from a government side, also confirming that what they have seen with their cameras and other systems is actually also what the government would like them to do and would like them to know. In Mobilidata, we have a lot of ongoing activities. It will lead us a little bit too far to go into detail, but we have launched the set of 5 first use cases last month, and the last set of use cases will be launched in February next year, for 2024. As said, if you're interested in knowing when, what, why, and how, contact Menno or myself, and we will gladly explain to you what we're doing and how we're doing this. One last word on Mobilidata number 2. We would like to make a sort of follow-up program on Mobilidata 1, because we do feel that the launch of an ecosystem does need a little bit more support than simply saying, hey, we're out there, we're great, come and join us. So we would like to take the lessons learned and put them in a follow-up program. And I've just put on 2 of the tracks that we've foreseen in Mobilidata 2. First, on the left side, it's the general privacy push that we would like to do. We would like to test out some promising technologies to help the privacy of road users manage better. The one is the Edge AI solution. So any data that can be processed close to the road user and information that only useful information that's processed through the CITS ecosystem will help us to avoid unnecessary privacy information treatments. And on the other hand, there is also in Flanders very much welcome the Solipods, the privacy management tool that's developed by Tim Berners-Lee. It's something that's very promising to help manage privacy better by the individual road user. On the other side, on the right side, we will also be looking at some extra use cases. And to be honest, it's a little bit also to mix modalities in the same time. So mix motorcycle approaching with the use case of in-vehicle information for cars and trucks, to push the boundaries between the modality of motorcycle and car was one that we liked very much. So sending a warning in traffic jam zones when there are motorcycle approaching seemed to us an interesting use case to develop a little further. And the same with on-street parking situation where opening doors from cars do pose a risk in bicycle accidents. So we would like the bicycle industry to be connected to the more connected to the OEMs, so that they can work on CITS use case together in Flanders, where we would like to be an interesting region to innovate. That's all from me. I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I think I can give the word back to Paul.
Thank you very much indeed, Bart. So Menno and Casper, if you would like to join Bart as well on screen now. We've got just about 10 minutes to have some questions. A reminder, the whole of this webinar has been recorded and will be available later in the week for you. And we'd love to have your questions in the Q&A section. Let's go back to one of the first slides that was actually seen during this meeting today. So Menno, you had that slide of a very sad looking car on its own in a drive-in movie, saying getting the audience is actually a difficult thing. Yet you said that you've got 25% of cars in the Netherlands that can take advantage of the solution. So explain to me how you go about getting the audience actually so that the information that you're gathering is actually going to reach the end user.
Yes, so there are a number of apps in the Netherlands that are widely used, and actually I should name Flitsmeister as one of the most important one. And by opening up the data to all these existing apps and also to fleets, logistical fleets, but also emergency vehicles, etc. That has led to this really quite significant volume of connected cars.
So what you're basically saying is one of the key things is not to kind of reinvent the wheel. Don't go back and try and set up your own platform. Work with ones that already exist.
Exactly. And I think it's basically it's close to impossible, I think, to launch your own app. Well, you can of course launch your app, but nobody will install that for this particular use case.
So the beauty is you're bringing together all the different information sources into one platform that can be used. Now, the issue, but there's one example on my website, Highways News. I get news stories about initiatives with, for example, eCall. And one of the frustrations in the UK in the years since eCall has been introduced is that it's there, it's implemented in all new vehicles, but people don't necessarily understand it who have it in their vehicle, and emergency services aren't necessarily making the most of the platform and all the advantages it could bring. How do we, once we've got people in authorities using the talking traffic and the data that you're dealing with, how do we actually get them to exploit it to its maximum?
Was it a question for me, Paul?
Yes, please, Bart. Yeah.
It's easy. It should be yeah. It's the responsibility of the authority to make the data available and to make as convenient as possible solutions for their group of road users they want to deal with. It's not about making a one for all app that everybody can use, or a one for all solution that anybody can download. It's about finding the right people interested in serving a certain type of road user for a certain type of purpose in their environment. The only thing we need to do is make that sure that the information layer that we're providing is as good as possible, so that they can work with their target group that they're focusing on. And if you're dealing with elderly people, it will be a different solution than you're dealing with younger people. So the only thing we have to worry about is that the information is available. And if you're like Strava and you work with sporty people, you will know what kind of target audience you want to reach, and and adapt to that kind of audience. The problem with eCall is it needs to be built in every car, and there is little explanation. There is the transition between the non-existence of the service and the existence of the service is difficult for eCall. It's very difficult to manage. I do believe that with CITS it will be different. It will be a gradual transition. The early adopters will be first, as usual, and then it's up to the market to deploy interesting services, and up to the governments to ensure that the information source, the information layer are there to be used in their region.
And you mentioned that digital role for road operators is coming faster than they think. Whose job is it to get them prepared to this digital role?
Oh, that's not up to me to say that, Paul. And I believe that Casper is better for this to say, but I think it will come automatically. It's like the first step is CITS. Next step will be hey, we want more. We want also information on the curbs. We want digital information on their bridges. We want everything must have a digital equivalent in the future, and without it, things won't work. Every authority wants the autonomous vehicle to come to their region, but in order to do so, they will need to make the effort to provide it with the necessary environment, so that the vehicles and the people using them can understand what they're driving in.
Okay, so And so, Casper, actually, Dirk Beyer asked a kind of similar question to the one I asked of Bart that maybe you can pick up, which is how CITS works so that all responsible authorities in the Netherlands work together.
Well, and I think that also goes to your point on equal. I think it is a responsibility of authorities, especially the national authority, to coordinate the policy making and the agreements as to the investments, the directions, the planning, and not just on a technical level. And I mean, internationally, CITS is very much standardized, but now you get to need to get into a cooperation on a national, regional, and local level. And it is not a question of whether or not road authorities will go into that digitization process. The question is, when do they step in? And how can you prevent them stepping in too late? Because imagine if a bank wouldn't be offering their services online, or allowing people to get their money through an ATM, which started decades ago. You're out of business. And you do have a responsibility to cater to all your citizens, being also consumers, consuming a navigation services or what have you, to be able to offer them the same level of information and safety on the roads. So it is inescapable. And I think that they do need assistance. We're very much aware that there are smaller municipalities with a very small organization, but you can assist them. And at least in the Netherlands, there's a basic understanding that you cannot do it alone, not the national government and not the local authorities.
Okay, thank you for that. Menno, a couple of technical questions for you. First of all, on latency, we picked up on the fact that the latency is pretty good, but people have asked questions. So can you just reinforce or reassure people that there isn't an issue?
Yes, so we continuously monitor the latency in the ecosystem. But we also had TNO, which is the Dutch the research institute in the Netherlands. They also formally investigated the latency. So, and what we see from there is that the end-to-end latency, so for instance, from traffic light to road user, is between 100 and 150 milliseconds in average. So this is faster than you can notice as a human being. And this means that all these use cases that we can implement today, all that so-called day 1.5 use cases, the latency really is no issue. And I expect that in the future with 5G networks becoming available, because this is based on 4G. So with 5G and also possibly with edge facilities in the 5G network, I mean, we know we will be faster, and so we'll probably also be able to serve even more latency critical use cases than we do today.
Okay, right. We've got time for two very quick answers. Bart, I just wanted to ask you about the benefits to traffic efficiency. We've had a question from Subamoy Ghosh from Jaguar Land Rover, who wants to know the benefits through connected cars to actually just making traffic more efficient.
Oh, that's a difficult question, Paul. Can I first add to what Menno was saying on latency?
Yep,
I know
sure.
that it's a big issue for everybody, and it always comes back. The use cases that we're dealing with today are about humans. If the human cannot see the difference between the situation that on the road and what he's seeing on his screen or in his interface, then there is no issue. And believe me, I've done the tours in the Netherlands with all the traffic lights. Traffic lights are a perfect example and they're going end to end. They're going through the whole chain. If you cannot see the difference with the human eye, it's latency is not an issue. But about the benefits for CITS in automotive use cases, I believe that was the question, Paul. Is that correct? I think that the automotive world is very much focused today on getting things observed from their side. They're very much on how to develop the best possible detection with all kinds of technologies, be it from camera, LiDAR, radar, and they're doing quite a good job. But the last layer of confirmation of an authority that's saying exactly that's what we would like you to do is something. The redundancy in information is, in my opinion, more of an benefit than exactly the other possible solutions that they can provide with from their side. So I'm not really sure that that's the correct answer for your question, but I invite to come to Menno and me, and then we can talk further.
What I think I'm getting from that, actually, Bart, is that this is an entire webinar of its own that we need to talk about the benefits. So we can't answer it in a minute. I'm going to try one last question with you, Menno, and this has come in from people who've been asking about standards and just trying to pick out standards that exist and whether they've got to start with whole new standards again. So one that has been picked up, William Bergmark suggested, where does this fit in with DATEX 2? And then, especially given your news today about your expansion into the United States, the standards between European traffic signal protocols with those such as the US standards J2735 and NTCIP, just give us a bit of reassurance on where it all fits in with standards that people are used to already.
Sure. So, well, first of all, let me mention that our platform is data agnostic, as strange as that may sound, but it means that we can exchange all the message types that you can think of. So we can also exchange DATEX messages. That's not a problem. And we can also exchange, well, all the formats basically that you can think of. I think we shouldn't focus too much on these standards. The important thing to realize, it's not a bottleneck. So that's number one, that is important. And then the second thing is that it depends a bit what type of message type, what payload you want to use, also depends on the use case sometimes. So it's just a tool, and it's a toolkit. You use the tool, whatever is best fit. That said, if you look at these really large scale, these deployments with which the message volumes that I showed for the Netherlands, their ETSI messages are really well equipped for that type of data exchange because they're very small. So you can exchange billions of it within low latencies. So that's about payloads, and then about interfacing. So how, what type of interface do you use to exchange messages? Also there, I mean, this is one of the key functionalities of our platform that is very easy to add interfaces to it. For us, that's something we call an adapter, and we can just simply dock an adapter into our platform, and we can have multiple adapters operational at the same time. So I would say focus on impact and audience. These are the hard problems, and the interfaces and the message types. For me, I would say that we solve these problems.
Excellent work. Right. Unfortunately, gentlemen, we are out of time. We could have spoken, I think, for probably another hour on just discussing some of the advantages of the brilliant work you've been doing. Now, a reminder to you watching that this webinar has been recorded, and you'll get a link so you'll be able to watch again all the presentations and pick up again some more things you may have missed first time round. And of course, you'll be able to share with colleagues who've been unable to make it today today so you can share the information that you've learnt. Now we'll have more webinars for you in the future, so look out for details of those, and we look forward to welcoming you to more knowledge sharing and insights into the future. For now though, it just leaves me to thank Menno, Casper and Bart for their time today, their insights and their expertise, and I'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you again soon for another webinar. Thank you very much indeed.